Hey Fusion, welcome back. We're here today with Sal and Miriam here for a lesson for us. Can you just introduce yourselves and tell us about what you guys are going to be talking about today?
My name is Sal. This is my wife Miriam of 3 years. We have three kids, 20, 18, and 12. And the topic today that we're going to be discussing is your place is not your position, specifically focusing on the functions of a husband and wife in a marriage. And we will be referencing Ecclesiastes 4, verses 9 through 10.
So, two people are better than one because they can reap more benefits from their labor. For if they fall, one will help his companion up. But pity the person who falls down and has no one to help him up.
So, what we're going to primarily be talking about is teamwork, which I think we just showed right there. The collaborative effort to achieve a common goal. We see this primarily in sports where it's easier to define. For example, in basketball, you have three-point shooters, you have defensive specialists, you have bigs, you have guards. So the roles are pretty defined. But what can often happen without knowing is you can get embedded in a specific role. And you'll see that sometimes with a player where somebody is considered themselves to only do one thing. They only shoot threes. They only do this. Nobody expects them to do anything else, and sometimes what ends up happening is that player also isn't prepared to do anything else. And we can see that happening in marriage, and it's happened with us. It's an issue that we've had to address. So when I met my wife, she was a single mother of three, and she had her established role. She was the provider. She was the caretaker. Our son has autism, so she was the one handling everything medically. She did it all. She was a well-oiled machine. So when we got married, I rooted my role in where I felt it fit best, and also probably what was most easiest to me also. I had no problem shoveling. I was doing laundry. I could do the dishes. Wherever I deemed fit, I did my part, so to speak. And for the majority of our marriage, early on, things seemed to work until it didn't. So COVID hit in 2020. And when that happened, the kids were at home all day. Mm-hmm. So with them being home, it was an extra meal for her to cook. It was also meaning more trips to the grocery store, more times outside of the house. On top of that, my wife had just started a new job. She was also trying to help our daughter with school. So things had changed a bit. Her level of responsibility had increased, and mine didn't. So the pendulum became unbalanced. And more importantly, I was completely oblivious to it. I was doing my part. I was still shoveling. I was still doing laundry and doing the dishes. So one day, my wife comes home from doing the groceries, and I help her bring in the groceries from the garage, like I always had. Asked her if she needed anything, putting them away, and I went right back on the couch to watch TV like I was used to doing. But I could tell there was a sense of disappointment in her and frustration on her end, but I didn't specifically know why. Through prayer and practice, I've learned to not always assume, but to ask, which is what I did. And that's when she told me she was just really tired and overwhelmed, and amongst other feelings that I'm sure she could probably go into a little bit more detail of what she was feeling at that moment.
Yeah, so like Sal said, I was just overwhelmed. I been taking this role on by myself and not realizing how much I was carrying, how much I was taking on, and I had to take a few steps back and really assess how I was feeling. And the other thing that I also noticed is that I was having a really hard time asking for help. So I had to take in ask myself the why. Why am I having such a hard time? Why am I struggling with having to just ask? And I realized that I had a sense of, pride along with, inner vows that I had kind of just taken on because of my background and having a single mom for 13 years of my life, kind of just enabled me to not want to be like her, not want to depend on anybody else. So I had to really, in that moment that I came home and I had, these feelings and emotions, and I had been carrying them for a very long time. I had to see, okay, I had to like pray and ask God, like, where is this coming from? And so I realized that it was pride, and it was fear, and it was not having trust in my husband, that if I asked, that he, that he wouldn't disappoint me. So yeah, I just had to take a few steps back, and then also understand that, by me not asking him for help, I wasn't allowing him to take his position as a husband and helping me with, with everything that I had been taking on. So.
And in this specific situation, when she finally expressed what was happening, and I remember her specifically saying, I'm going to the grocery store by myself. You're here at home watching TV. Like, I want to go to the grocery stores together. I want us to be a team. I want us to work. And in the midst of all that, when she starts listing everything that is becoming overwhelming for her, and she starts saying all the things that she's doing, this is by far the hardest part. It's the thing that I know that it is only through God that I was able to stop myself. Is there is this initial temptation to now respond with all the things that I do. Okay, well, you're telling me that I'm not helping you do the groceries, but I'm putting them away. You're telling me that I'm not doing this, but I'm doing that. And the truth is that's all a lie, and that's all pride speaking to me, because that's not what she's doing. She's not telling me everything that I don't do. Okay? The truth is for the first time, she was really telling me I need help. So I had to really take that into consideration and not make it about me in that situation. It was my wife asking, hey, I actually need help. And that's an opportunity that I had been seeking, and I know it was a tough thing for her to do on her own. And so in that moment, it can get lost. And I thank the Lord that it didn't. So one of the things that comes to mind that I've looked up is healthy relationships are not made up of two people who split everything evenly. They are made up of two people who have figured out how to divide responsibilities in a way that makes sense for both and doesn't feel like too much of a burden. I think it was just important for both of us to understand that the responsibilities that we have can change over time. Mm-hmm. And in this case, that's what happened. It wasn't that she didn't like cooking anymore. It wasn't that she didn't like taking care of the kids. It wasn't that I decided I don't want to cut grass anymore. It had nothing to do with that. It just was, it changed. It was too much now. It was too much. And when it became too much, it was a little bit difficult for her to explain it to me because she wasn't used to doing that. So one of the things that I told her recently is I say that spouses need to be like waiters at a restaurant. I go to a restaurant, they bring me my food, usually, okay? And they traditionally ask me, like, do you need anything? And I say, I'm good. And I start eating. And so at that moment, I'm good. Well, 10 to 15 minutes later now, I realize that they haven't brought out my pancakes yet, or I need a refill on my coffee. Now I'm looking up, like, where's the waiter? Where's the waiter? Now I need help, and that waiter's not coming. So when they come back and ask, I may have a different answer. And sometimes that's one of the things that I've noticed with my wife is sometimes she's cooking, and I may go there and ask her, hey, is everything okay? Do you need help with anything? She might tell me no. Okay. Mm-hmm. That doesn't mean that 10 minutes later she might not need help then. Yeah. And it's the same way with me. I like cutting the grass. I enjoy doing it. But some days it's a hot day, and now you're out in the heat for a bit, and it feels good if she pops out and says, hey, do you want me to help you with anything? I may not want her to, but the fact that I know that I'm not doing it by myself, I think is really key to us being able to work together. So it's just accepting the necessity that you're going to have to constantly adapt, and sometimes on the fly, not taking it personal when it happens. And like I said, more importantly, not listening to that lie that's being told of what you're not doing versus what you are doing, because sometimes we can switch these words around very quickly, and then that changes the conversation completely. So that was our example of just working together as a team and constantly reevaluating your role, both just in the marriage. It's going to take used to working together, but what can happen sometimes is, we actually discussed this briefly on the drive here, is when it becomes you do this, I do that, you're not really working as a team. You're two individuals now just accomplishing the function of the household, and that's not what it's about. At some point, I'm going to need to learn how to do things that I might not need, that I don't know, if it means that that's going to help my wife, and vice versa. She might not like shoveling, but when winter hits in Chicago, my back can hurt a bit. So it's good that she's willing to go out there, and I need to do it on her end. So
That's awesome. So just quickly, for getting in that habit is awesome, but for couples that are looking to take that first step, I think you might have almost kind of touched on this a little bit, is that when you're asking for help that first time, or you're saying, I think I've got an unfair share of the load, as the person receiving that, there's a danger of feeling accused of not helping out enough. What kind of both sides, the person bringing up, I think I'm doing too much, what can they do to not make that sound as accusatory, and what can you do as the person receiving to kind of be more understanding? What kind of things can you look for in understanding what your partner is saying to you?
Well, for me, I would say, like, don't come off as like accusing. Don't point fingers.
That's challenging.
Yeah, it is a lot. Because especially when you're full of emotions, full of resentment and things that you've been carrying out through, it's just important to be able to, like, not come from an emotional perspective, which is something that I'm still working on. Something that I still have to work on delivering, and
because it is emotional.
Yeah.
You can't separate that, but
Right.
to try, right?
Right. But, stating, like, you do this really good. And I'm not saying that everything is bad. Just in this perspective, like, I need a little bit more help in this area.
I think a huge part also too is we've talked about how quickly a tide can change. We use this different examples. Kind of what I do is, when you're eating, you don't really know the moment when you become stuffed. You just realized I'm stuffed now, and that's how it sometimes can feel with, I think, being overwhelmed. Like you said, like, I'm not overwhelmed right now. I'm whelmed, but I can handle it. I'm whelmed, but I can handle it. But you're creeping towards getting overwhelmed, and then now you're overwhelmed.
Right.
So there is no part where it's like, if you can try to catch it, that's the best way that I can describe it. Like, reevaluate, right, hold on. Am I feeling this emotion consistently when this is happening? And then, like I said, acknowledging that situations can come about that change things. Like, it wasn't that I was oblivious to the fact that your everyday life changed so much with, I was coming home from work, and it was like, in your eyes, you're like, I thought that you'd be hungry right away, so I wanted to make sure I cooked right away. Well, you're cooking for me, the kids are eating, the kids are still in school. It's like your life changed completely.
Yeah.
And I didn't really realize how much your life had changed. It is just considering sacrificing your little bit of time where we live in our own worlds, because that does happen, to stop and think, wait, hold on, is my wife's world, has it changed? Because we're joined together, but there are so many aspects where we are by ourselves. Even with you taking a new job, I know that going through that was a different experience than what she had been used to. So now she's going to feel different when her day is over with, as opposed to before. Understanding that things can change. It's different for me when I coach. Those are longer days. So I'm not coming home at the same time. And as far as you said, is what can we do to prevent it? Like I said, it's knowing the certain things when you can. I coach basketball season, so I know my season starts in November. I used to tell this to my kids, like, that I coach, when it comes to grades, and it's the same thing. During basketball season, these are going to be long days. your grades might drop off. So if you know that, maybe in September and October, you have some pretty good grades, so you can balance it out. It's the same way. I know coaching season's gonna come. I need to fill my wife's love tank up in September and October and as much as I can, because I know that unintentionally or not, it's going to take a hit during coaching season, and then it. So it's just I said we tend to say this: being proactive instead of reactive, seeing what you can. Because a lot of the times when we do that with prayer, we always say that are we proactively praying or are we reactively praying? Because we can do that a lot. Like, we're praying now because we just got into an argument, and that's good. But we also could have prayed that, hey, I pray that my wife's new job isn't overwhelming. I pray that she can help out the kids in an efficient, quick way as possible. Sometimes we forget to pray about these things until they start happening. So.
Yeah, and to add a little bit on more to you, it's like having that grace with each other and not forgetting, that God forgives us every day. So focusing, on the positives and not so much on the negatives, also forgiving each other.
Awesome. Wow. That was great, guys. Thank you so much for sharing and great advice.
Thank you.
Thank you.